how does your time split between? Is it equally split between attacking strategies and defending strategies? How are you looking more on just let's go back to the example of my team, how I perform, but then are you also then delving into how the opponents that I will play perform as well?
Yeah, I spend slightly more time, I would say, on the attacking side.
Mm.
Um, there's a bit more that sort of can be done in studying sort of how the opponent reacts to different situations. That I like to spend a bit more time on to focus on that will give us the edge in hopefully scoring a goal. Um, because that's ultimately um something that you can plan for a lot more.
Mm.
As most teams will pretty much defend the same way from game to game.
Yeah.
Um, whereas you can sort of spend a week sort of working out how they attack, and then they do something completely different that they've not done all season,
Yeah.
that will completely surprise you, but you have no way of sort of
Mm.
predicting because they've never done it before.
Yeah.
Um, so there's an element of that to it that it's more predictable to see how they defend from game to game, and from that you can sort of manipulate opportunities and come up with ideas.
Yeah. So then, in terms of then just on the kind of defensive thing, I understand that the most obvious things would be, and I'm talking here about how you would defend in terms of potentially positioning of players. So, like the obvious thing would be like height and heading ability for where people might be positioned and where what their roles might be. Is there anything other than those two obvious things, Stu, that you might consider when kind of thinking about who to put where in terms of the defensive position?
Yeah, so data plays a big part in what I do as well. So I sort of create visualizations looking at where the sort of opponent crosses it, and um, from the video I look at where their sort of main target men will sort of attack.
Yeah.
Um, I really like a metric that StatsBomb have introduced recently called hops.
Okay.
There's a sort of new way of evaluating aerial performance rather than just looking at sort of aerial win rates. It goes into a bit more depth and looks at um, basically a player's aerial win rate across their whole sort of career. Um, but every aerial duel they have, it looks at who that aerial duel was against,
Mhm.
because it's obviously easier to win an aerial duel against
Yeah.
Messi than it is Van Dijk.
Yeah.
Um, and so it'll reward players for winning headers against players with a higher rating, and that provides a really sort of good evaluation of an aerial ability of a sort of squad
Mm.
or player. Um, so I sort of look at the sort of most likely starting 11s of each team and look at the sort of um, the hops rating of each player and the zonal markers and etc. to work out where those big mismatches are likely to be,
Yeah.
which will help us in sort of both defense and attack as well.
Mm.
So, for instance, if the opponent constantly has taken most of their corners to the sort of near corner of the 6 yard area, their big target man always attacks that area, and we've got someone with a poor aerial ability in that zone, then
Mm.
that's going to be something we want to know and want to be able to fix before going into the game.
Yeah. Nice. That's interesting. Didn't know anything about that metric before you said it, so that's really interesting. I mean, in terms of then just on the while we're on the stats, I mean, what other kind of stats will you be kind of considering then, Stu, in terms of different metrics other than the one you've just mentioned there?
So I look at the defensive records and the offensive records of the sort of league set pieces as well.
Mhm.
Um, as that all sort of factors into things as well. For instance, if the opponent has got the worst goals per corner conceded rate in the league and the worst XG per corner conceded in the league, probably means they're not very good at defending corners. So maybe we want to spend more time in training this week on sort of focusing on those sort of weaknesses of the opposition. Um, Maybe on match day, we can send an extra player into the penalty area to really try to force that error since we know they're already weak at defending them. Maybe if we stick an extra person
Yeah.
into the mix, then it'll help swing the odds in our favor a little bit more. So those are sort of important as well.